Hello bookworms, it's Jade from Bedtime Bookworm and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm here with another BooktubeSFF Babbles. Today we're going to be talking about my reaction to the shortlist. So if this is the first time you're hearing about the BooktubeSFF Awards or the BooktubeSFF Babbles, I will link my announcement video for the awards down in the description box and up in that corner, I think. I'm probably wrong. And also, this is the schedule for the Babbles topics. So this week's Babbles topic is our reaction to the shortlist. If you missed the shortlist, I also have a video announcing what the shortlist for the awards is. I will link that down below and up in a corner. You should definitely watch that video before watching this one because I'm going to be spoiling what the shortlist is. Or I guess you could just watch this video and find out what the shortlist is this way. The reading period for the BooktubeSFF Awards has officially started, so if you want to participate, you can pick out the categories and books that you want to read and vote on, and you have until the end of April to read them, and voting is the first week in May. We also have a Discord this year for the BooktubeSFF Awards, which I will link in the description box, and we have different chat rooms, or I think they're called servers. Maybe the whole thing is a server. I don't know. We have different places where you can talk about each of the books that have been nominated so that we can chat about our thoughts on them as we read them. As a reminder, I am personally judging 3 categories. I'm going to be judging the science fiction category, the adult science fiction category, I'm going to be judging the YA category, and I'm also going to be judging the short works category. So I'll start with my reactions to those 3 categories first. So these are the books that were nominated for the science fiction category this year. And to be honest, I'm not super surprised by any of these. I feel like Blake Crouch is a pretty big author, and Recursion either won or almost won the Goodreads Awards, so I knew that it was one that was really popular, and I was really happy to see it on this list because 1, I've already read it, and 2, it was one of my favorite books from last year. I also wasn't surprised by A Memory Called Empire. I feel like I've heard so many people talking about that book, and I, for one, am really excited about reading it. Gideon the Ninth has also been widely talked about, and I know that there are a lot of people who really like it, although there was some controversy around the author when it first came out, but it was super buzzy, so I wasn't surprised to see it on this list, although initially when I saw it being nominated for this category, I guess I was a little bit surprised because I thought it was fantasy. All I knew about it was that it had necromancers in it, but apparently they are necromancers in space, and that sounds really cool. I'm all about genre bending, so I am really excited to read this one and see what the fuss is about. I was a little bit sad that Children of Ruin by Adrian Tchaikovsky didn't make it because I just read in February, I will link my February wrap-up, I just read Children of Time, which is the first book in, I think it's just going to be a duology. But I read that in February and I loved it so much, and I was really looking forward to possibly reading Children of Ruin as part of the awards. I mean, I'm still gonna read Children of Ruin, it just won't be in the next few months because I'm gonna be busy reading for BooktubeSFF. The other science fiction book that I thought might make it, but didn't, is City in the Middle of the Night. I feel like I saw that book going around a lot, so I was a little surprised that it didn't make it. Okay, moving on to YA. These are the 4 books that were nominated for YA. We did have a tie in this category. That's why there are 4 books and not 3. First of all, I was thrilled to see that Sorcery of Thorns made it because I have already read it and it was one of my favorite books, like really top tier book of last year. I'd say it was in my top 3. So I was really excited that it made it to the list. When votes for Starsight started coming in, I was a little bit surprised, but only because I had kind of forgotten that it had been published in 2019. It was published at the end of 2019, and so it just really wasn't on my radar, but honestly, I'm not surprised at all. I mean, Sanderson is super popular, and luckily I tend to like Sanderson, so I have high hopes for that book. I haven't read Skyward yet, so I'm gonna have to read both Skyward and Starsight, but I am very excited for it, and I'm pretty sure I'm gonna like them. Then we have The Wicked King by Holly Black, and this one I was kind of surprised by, and actually when I saw that a book from this series made it to the shortlist, I thought it was the last book in the series, but no, this is the second book in the series. Apparently both The Wicked King and The Queen of Nothing, which is the third book. They were both published in 2019, one at the beginning and one at the end. So my guess is that maybe not enough people had read Queen of Nothing, and that's why I didn't make it onto the shortlist. But I've also heard people say that they liked The Wicked King better than Queen of Nothing, so who knows. Anyways, I'm glad that it's the second book in the series because I also haven't read The Cruel Prince. As some of you might know, I try to wait until a series is completed before I start reading it, and this was a series that I had definitely planned to read at some point just because it's so popular. I had to see if I was gonna like it, but I was putting it off until the series is completed. It is now completed, but I don't have to read all 3 of them for the awards. I just have to read 2. And while I say that I was planning on reading this eventually anyways, I'm not like super excited about it. I'm actually a little apprehensive. I have read Holly Black before, and I've liked the 2 other books of hers that I've read. But the main reason why I'm hesitant about this series is because I know that the main romance is an enemies to lovers, and I struggle with that trope a lot. I just often don't find the change in the relationship to be believable, and I just have a hard time getting on board with enemies to lovers a lot of the time, so I'm apprehensive that I'm not gonna like the romance in this series, and I know that the romance plays a really big part in the story, so I think I'm gonna like it because in general I think I like Holly Black. I mean, I've only read 2 of her books, but the enemies to lover thing makes me a little nervous. Okay, and then the last book that was nominated for the YA category was actually a really big surprise for me, and that's The Gilded Wolves. This was a surprise to me because I honestly had heard mostly negative things about this book. My impression was that people didn't really like it, and so I was really surprised to see it make the shortlist. I am actually excited to read this one because I want to form my own opinion on it and see what I think, because I've heard such negative things from a lot of people, but obviously a lot of people also really enjoyed it if it made the shortlist. And I have no idea what I'm gonna think. I have not read any Roshni Chokshi before. One book that I was really surprised didn't make the shortlist, like I was 100% expecting this book to make the shortlist, and that is The Toll by Neal Shusterman. That's the 3rd and final book in the Scythe series. This series has been so hyped over the last few years, and the last book, The Toll, came out last year, and I feel like I've heard only good things about it. Like, everybody seems to love this series. So I fully expected that the 3rd book was going to make the shortlist, and it didn't. And honestly, I'm a little sad about it because I really want to read that trilogy. It's one of the trilogies I said I wanted to read in 2020, and I thought that the BooktubeSFF Awards were going to, like, force my hand into reading it sooner rather than later, and now I can't read it sooner because I have to read all the BooktubeSFF Award books, but I am still very much looking forward to reading this later in the year, or at least starting the series later in the year. Okay, moving on to the short fiction list. These are the 3 short fiction nominations, or the ones that made it to the shortlist. To Be Taught If Fortunate by Becky Chambers was no surprise at all. I fully expected this one to be on the list. I feel like everyone and their mom loves Becky Chambers. I have not read her yet, so I'm excited to be introduced to Becky Chambers. I did think originally that this novella took place in the same world or universe as her series, and so I was kind of apprehensive about the idea of reading all of her previous books just to read this novella, but I'm happy to have found out that that is not the case. They are completely unrelated from what I'm told, and so I can just read this novella as an introduction to Becky Chambers, and I'll see what I think of her. The Test by Sylvain Neuvel also wasn't a huge surprise to me. It was only a surprise in the sense that I didn't realize that it was a novella until the nominations started coming in. I thought that it was a full-length novel, but it is one that I have heard about, but I haven't heard like a ton of people talking about it. I mean, granted, not a ton of people read a lot of short fiction, I feel like, at least not the booktubers that I watch, but I'm definitely familiar with Sylvain Neuvel's other books, as in, like, I've heard of them and I know who he is. I haven't read his other books either, but this will be maybe a good introduction to him because I'm interested in reading his other books. And then the last short fiction is This Is How You Lose the Time War, and I was a little bit surprised, but also not surprised by this one. So I went through most of 2019 never having heard of this novella, but as I was watching Best of the Year videos, this novella showed up at least 3 times, and it seemed like a lot of people really liked it. And honestly, the way that they describe this novella, like the story, is so good, and I am super excited to read it. So it's been described as like Killing Eve with time travel. So basically there's assassins with time travel, and that just sounds so good, and the fact that a few of the people that I follow have really liked it makes me super excited, and this is probably the one out of the shortlist that I'm the most excited about. Or at least it's really high up there. Okay, let's move on to the categories that I am not judging. So first, the fantasy category. These are the books that were shortlisted for the fantasy category. So obviously, I'm super excited that The Prior of the Orange Tree made it, because that was like one of my top 3 favorite books that I read last year, and I really hope that a lot of people like it. We'll see how the voting pans out. The other 2 books that made the fantasy shortlist were honestly a bit of a surprise for me. I mean, I guess the Starless Sea shouldn't be too much of a surprise, because I know that there are a lot of people out there who like Erin Morgenstern, but I honestly hadn't seen a lot of reviews or people just talking about this book quite yet. I think it came out at the end of 2019, but I could be wrong. And then Gods of Jade and Shadow, I saw people talking about it, but just like not that many. So they definitely surprised me. This is a category that I don't think I'm gonna get around to reading. Although because I only have to read 2 books to be able to complete this category, they're on my list to try, but I don't think I'm going to fit them in. Some of the other books that I kind of expected to see in the shortlist for fantasy was like the last book in the Red Sister series, I think it's Holy Sister, the Book of the Ancestors series by Mark Lawrence. I feel like that one has been so buzzy, and a lot of people love that series, so I was kind of expecting to see that one in the shortlist. I also thought that Dark Dawn was like definitely going to be in the shortlist, and it wasn't. And then the last book in the Winter Night trilogy by Catherine Arden came out in early 2019, so I kind of thought that book would also make the shortlist, because I'm pretty sure the last 2 years books, the first and second book from that series, made the shortlist, just like the Book of the Ancestors series too. So I was kind of expecting that the shortlist for fantasy was all 3 of them were going to be the final book in trilogies, and I was thinking like there's no way I'm able to read all of those books. So I'm kind of happy that it ended up being all first books in series or standalones, but I still don't know if I'm going to be able to have time to read them. Oh, and I also kind of expected Middle Game to make it, but it didn't. I feel like so many people loved Middle Game, and I really wanted to read it. I wanted Middle Game to make the shortlist because I wanted an excuse to read it, but it didn't make it. Okay, the debut category. These are the books that made it to the debut shortlist, and honestly, none of these surprised me, because they were all books that I feel like I've heard so many people talk about and so many people love. I've already talked about Gideon the Ninth, I've heard a lot about And a Memory Called Empire, and then the 10,000 Doors of January, I actually thought that it might make it into the fantasy category because I've heard so many people talking about it, but I was really happy that it at least made it into the debut category. This category, even though I'm not judging, I am planning, hoping to read all of the books, because 2 of them overlap with the science fiction category, so I will be reading A Memory Called Empire and Getting the Ninth anyways, and all I have to do is read 10,000 Doors of January to be able to complete this category, and it's a book that I already really wanted to read based on all of the glowing reviews I've heard of it in the past few months. I've also heard some people say they didn't like it, but mostly I've heard good things, so I'm really excited about this category. I can't really think of any other debuts that I was expecting to see. There were probably some YA debuts that I thought could make it, but I wasn't sure how they would really compete against the adult debuts, so I'm not surprised, honestly, that there aren't any YA debuts in the debut category. And then the last category to discuss is the middle grade category. So these are the books that made it to the shortlist for middle grade. I am pretty out of the loop on middle grade, so I can't say that any of these were really a surprise. I'm definitely not surprised to see Tunnel of Bones on this list, because Victoria Schwab is just a really popular author in general. And I guess along those lines, I shouldn't be surprised by Dead Voices either, because Catherine Arden is also really popular, but I can't say I was really aware that Dead Voices came out last year. And then Dragon Pearl by Yoon-Ha Lee, I definitely had heard of, and I was really excited and happy to see it on the list. But I have to admit that I was completely unaware of Sal and Gabby Break the Universe. I hadn't heard of it at all. So maybe that was a little bit of a surprise for me, but I also, like I said, am totally totally not in the middle grade loop. I was going to say that I was surprised that a Jessica Townsend book wasn't on this list because her Nevermore series is really popular, but I just checked Goodreads and she didn't have a Nevermore book come out last year. The second one came out in 2018, and the third one is scheduled for August 2020. So that explains why that didn't make the list. But other than the Jessica Townsend books, I'm not really aware of any other, like, popular middle grades. Alright guys, there you have it. Those are my thoughts and reactions to the short list. Let me know if you agreed or disagreed with any of my thoughts down in the comment section. And definitely go check out the Discord if you're planning on participating in the award season, because it is a lot of fun. If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more bookish content. That is all I have for now. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, bookworms, keep reading. Bye. And I feel like I have heard unanimously, I can't say that word. Okay, let's, oh, hi Miko, you never come in here. Bye.